Hey there, it's your host, Mara Glatzel, and you are listening to Even Here, Even Now, a podcast where we are devoted to sharing frank conversations and true stories about what it means to stay by your own side and meet your needs consistently, messily, and sustainably. Now, on to today's show. You can have the care and the deep ease that you're yearning for. The question I have for you is, what are you ready, able, and willing to do differently in order to have it? So over the course of the last 2 weeks, you've heard me talk a lot about burnout here. And we have together done some of the work around de-shaming and demystifying burnout, talking about how symptoms of burnout are just that, symptoms. They're not moral failings. They're not signs that you should be doing better. They're not things to optimize. They are real feelings and real needs to be tended to. And many of us get to this point, right, where we are able to see ourselves in the burnout, see ourselves in the symptoms, see ourselves in the overarching problem of carrying too much and for too long, and feeling the impact of that care over years, many of us, right? Most of us. And so when we get to this tipping point, the question really is, this is like where, we really have to be honest with ourselves. Okay, so given that I see myself in this, given that this is how I feel, given that I have needs for care, I have requirements for living well that are not being met, but at that point we peter off because we carry a belief that this is just what life is supposed to look like. And maybe we learn that, likely we learn that. But that belief, that stopping point keeps us stuck in old patterns of putting our care on the other side of this next thing we just got to, muscle through, white knuckle, get to the other side of. And the fantasy that there is a better time than right now to start doing this work of really turning towards ourselves, turning towards our care, and making micro shifts towards our sustenance and nourishment. Now, the tricky part about this fantasy is that it is so seductive. I also want a blank page in my calendar. I also want that better time, right? It feels like my life is so fraught. I'm juggling multiple things every single day. It is not ideal to have to take responsibility for my own care on top of everything else that I am carrying. But I think that it's this belief and this kind of idea of this is just how life is, where it meets our limited capacity because of how much we're holding. And that's where we stop. So what if we didn't stop there? What if you didn't stop there? What if I were to encourage you to really for a second ground into the idea that even if you have not known how to do this before, you do know how to do this. You do care for other people. You do attend to other people's needs. You do prioritize their comfort and their nourishment and their scheduling peculiarities and. You know how to do this. But you stop because you have a belief that you can or should be able to go without. And what if you can't, right? Your body is sending you. If you're burnt out, even peripherally, your body is sending you information. We cannot keep going the way that we have been. Something has got to give because you're a human being in a human body. However spectacular, multifaceted, and talented you are, I know you to be. Right? But that's almost worse because the more that we can carry, the more that we get accustomed to carrying. And then the more that we do carry on top of that. And, ask me how I know. But here's the deal. Things can be different for you. They are radically different for me. And I'm not special. I'm not different. I come from a lifetime of being a person with phenomenal ambition, being a person who is remarkably good at caring for others, both personally and professionally, being a person who was taught that my worth was aligned with what I do for others, what I tangibly create, the money that I make, how I look, how other people perceive me, instead of innately who I am. And it required some unlearning to really come to terms with the fact that, yeah, I'm good at a lot of things. Yeah, I'm profoundly capable. Yeah, I can rock up to an emergency, and I do. But what I found through my own journey with burnout is that just because I can doesn't mean I should. And just because I can for a time doesn't mean that it's sustainable for me in the long run. And my burnout has shown me that. My body has told me in no uncertain terms, you actually can't be everything to everyone all of the time. You actually can't say yes to even everything you want to say yes to. Never mind the stuff you say yes to, but you don't really want to say yes to, right? Like my body tells me, hey, babe, you can't even say yes to all the things you're jazzed about. And there's grief in that. There is grief in acknowledging the outer limits of my capacity. And it has been a journey to realize if I want to be a person with a full cup or even a semi-full cup, if I want to be a person who is in the room, in the conversation, in my community for the long haul, I'm the vessel for those contributions. And so I have got to take myself and my needs, my feelings, my body seriously. And that's actually in service to everything that I care about. It's not separate from everything that I care about. It's in service to the things that I care about, to care about myself too. And what I think is actually really beautiful about learning how to weave care into the life that you have now is that it challenges this belief system that our care and our life's work and our contributions should be separate from one another, right? Like I want to keep them well contained, but that's not realistic. And also, it's not actually how I want to live my life. For me, when I ask the question, what am I ready, able, and willing to do differently in order to feel how I want to feel in my body, which is radiantly alive, which is having surplus energy so I can say yes to things as they show up, so that I can be responsive to my life, to the needs of my family, my kids, my community. I want to be present and accounted for. And so what am I ready, able, and willing to do differently in order to have that? Well, again, the grief. I am willing to understand on a daily basis. I'm just one person. I had this conversation with myself yesterday because I had a day that was stacked with meetings for work, right? I'm working a lot this week because I'm gearing up to my amazing wet weekend this weekend, which is going to be a virtual retreat. Doors close tomorrow. If you want to get in with us, please do. So I've been working a lot, getting ready for that, and I'm very excited about it. But I had a day where it was like I had some personal work to do. Also, I am one of my town's 5 select board members, which means kind of a council that runs the town. Right? I live in a small New England town, so we have a select board. I had a select board meeting. I had an executive meeting before that. I am in the process of transitioning away from being the president of my kids' school PTA. So before that meeting, I had an event called Popsicles with the Principal. There was things that were, it's like there was a lot to do. And over the course of the day, I was kind of having this back and forth between myself and my to-do list. My to-do list was classically very ambitious. And as I moved throughout the day, as I was just a human being in the space and in my life, I was having conversations with myself, saying things like, all right, so you're not going to be able to do everything that you plan today. What are the most important things that are on this list? Okay, all right, kind of looking at what's the most important things, a lot of important things I couldn't move. So what do I need to do? What do I need myself as a human being in a human body in order to show up for all of these myriad kind of things that are on my plate. And this is the work of being in relationship with yourself. The more you know about what you need, the more familiar you are, well acquainted you are with the inner workings of your body and your ecosystem, the quicker this shorthand becomes, because it's a back and forth and a call and response between you and your body and your to-do list all day long. Right? It's like, okay, well, that's not going to get done. That's going to have to move to tomorrow. For example, I was going to record this podcast yesterday, but I just wasn't in the mindset to sit down and really focus and talk to you. So that had to be moved to today. I was mad about that. That wasn't my plan, right? Last night after my select board meeting was over, I had a plan to rush from there to go to the movies with my mom and my sister. I really wanted to do that. But at the end of that select board meeting, I was checking in with myself. I'm tired. It's going to be so crunched. I'm going to have to rush over there. I'm going to probably be a few minutes late, and I was sad about that. But the truth was, honoring my body and honoring myself required me to say no to something that I wanted to say yes to. And I share this example, not because it's particularly glamorous or interesting, but because this is what the inner workings of these conversations look like on a daily basis. And this is the result of having a depth relationship with myself, a depth understanding of my burnout warning signs, of my own personal care, and an intention, a large scale intention to not spread myself so thin that I come up short, to manage my energy from a place of sovereign self-leadership, from a place of tender stewardship, from I am responsible for this glorious and wonderful talent. I am responsible for this fallible human body, right? I am just a human. And sometimes I get tired, and sometimes I move slowly, and sometimes my brain isn't available in the straight line way that I want or need it to be. And all of those things are just facts and not flaws. So as you are beginning to think about what this work might look like for you, I want you to take that example and think about how it would feel to have somebody who really deeply cares about you, who is attuned to you over the course of your daily life, who is attuned to you enough that you are making these micro adjustments, micro attunements, who is not going to forget about you or extract from you or exploit you for weeks on end just to get something done or just to earn some sort of external approval. And I love external approval. I'm not saying the lure of that is not really, the pull is strong. But my first responsibility is to myself. And when I'm in my relationship with myself, I feel that. I feel that I am my own priority. And I wasn't my own priority for most of my life. It took coming to a place of truly devastating burnout. It took circumstances in my life where I had true emergencies that I had to show up for to learn how to be my own ally in this way. And these are the tools that I teach you in WET. And, once I open the doors for 10 next week, certainly in 10 is 12 weeks of learning and practicing these tools. This is a really important sea change in how you operate in your relationship with yourself each day. And the best way that I can think to describe that to you, that feeling is what is it like to be somebody's priority, to feel seen and heard and known and appreciated and acknowledged by someone. Now, those are needs that I always outsource to the people in my life. I wanted them to see and know me, to appreciate me in ways that I wasn't ready, able, or willing to do for myself. And that was a rude awakening. And if that's a rude awakening for you, I so hear you. But the truth is, you are your own responsibility. How you feel in your body is your responsibility. This doesn't mean you do it alone. And actually, I would argue that the better equipped you are in your relationship with yourself, the better equipped you are with a vocabulary for your needs, with a working understanding of your preferences, preferred strategies for getting those needs met, the better equipped you are at looping other people in. Yesterday I had in the middle of that day, I had to move a couch. And I had a plan for moving that couch, but the plan fell through. And I have a group chat with local friends that I'm in, and I offer, care to those people all the time. And I felt very comfortable being like, hey, can anyone help me move this couch? Who's got a truck? Who's got like a warm body who can help me move this thing? I was never able to do that before. I was never able to ask for help before. I was never able to feel confident about asking for help before because I was constantly in this state of litigating my needs. Do I really need that? I don't want to bother anyone. If they say yes, then what do I owe them in return? This endless sort of transactional math around my needs as it relates to other people. And through doing this work in my own life, I genuinely feel free of that. And that is such a good feeling. And part of that comes from appreciating my contributions. Like I do a lot for the people in my life, and it is okay for me to ask for and receive that care in return. Now, the asking is one thing. If nobody was available, sure, I would have figured out a, third such thing. But the better equipped we are in our relationship with ourselves, the more easily we're able to live our lives in a way that feels comfortable, easy, relaxed, and confident. So a better time to take care of yourself is not coming. A better time to practice these tools, because these are trial by fire lessons. We learn them as we go through our lives. So it's actually excellent that there's not a better time coming that's, separate from our lives. Because if it did, or if you had a sabbatical or you went on vacation, you might be able to tend to yourself in that cozy, beautiful bubble, but then you would return to your life as you know it. And what I want you equipped with are the tools and the strategies for being in your life and giving a shit about your care at the same time. Some things are going to have to give. It's going to be a little bit of flex and flow. But that's easy when you know yourself, when you have an understanding, and you also have a deeply held belief, which must be learned, which must be modeled. I am modeling it for you right now, that your care matters and that everything that you give a shit about, absolutely everything, is benefited by you being well-resourced. So here's the deal. Here's the deal about this precipice. Here's the deal about this ready, able, and willing question. How do you know when you're ready? My clients ask me this all the time. How do I know when I'm ready? And they say things like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Or I got to be all in to take the first step. But I have been working with humans for 15 years professionally, my whole life personally, and I have not really met a hell yes, all 100% in person in that time. Very often it's like degrees of readiness and fear. And so I put forward to you a new concept of readiness, a new reframe of readiness. And I like to think about this as, am I 51% in? So marginally more than half, right? The scales are tipping in my favor. Even if 49% of myself is squirming and uncomfortable and worried and, because I'm a human. So of course, even though I felt comfortable sending that text, I felt like that was a bold ask. That like, hey, who's got a truck and a body? Who wants to help me out today? I would say, I don't know, maybe a 30-70 split was how ready I felt to send that text message. But it wasn't a hell yes. It wasn't a whole body yes. And so I want to put forward that to you. If you've been thinking about working with me more closely, if you've been thinking about taking some action towards tending to yourself, we've been talking about burnout, like taking some action to triage your burnout and work yourself towards radiant aliveness, work yourself towards wholeness in a truly doable way. If you are 51% in the game, that's enough for me. And I want to give you permission. Don't want to give you permission. I want to encourage you to give yourself permission for that to be enough for you too. So what does it look like to be 51% into something, even if you are 49% squirming, kicking and screaming and, stressed? Do it with care. Do it with care. This is another place to ask, what do I need? What does that squirmy part of me need? Can I bring her along for the ride? Does she want a little snack? Does she need a glass of water? Would she feel more comfortable if I moved, but moved more slowly? You don't have to reject or abandon that part of you that's not totally on board yet. You are absolutely welcome, and I would encourage you to bring that part of you on board. That part of you can come along for the ride. It might just not be in the driver's seat, right? They can sit in the back seat. They can mope. This summer at summer camp, I was always telling everyone, every summer camp needs a dramatic kind of pouty goth girl who sits in the corner and doesn't want to have any fun. It's like, totally welcome in my space. You don't have to be fully on board for anything. And mostly I think we're not. So it's just reality. How can we bring those fearful, squirming, uncomfortable parts of ourselves to the party with us? And be like, here's a snack. You can just sit here by the wall. You don't have to do anything. You got in the room. Good job. Good job. Right? And so the same too is true for WET this weekend. If you have been thinking about joining us, if you've been listening to these podcast episodes, if you've been wondering what it is like to work with me more closely, if you are feeling 51% ready, bring that 49% with you. I promise we will be nice to them. I promise there is room for you to be in a fluctuating and nuanced space as it relates to readiness. And not only is there room for you, but also I just want to normalize that this is what it's like. This is what change is like. We are rarely fully on board with what we want. We are rarely just like absolutely ready, able, and willing wholesale to do the thing. So we have to. Just like we're learning that nuanced way of weaving care into the life that we have now, we have to learn how to bring that version of ourselves along for the ride and tend to them on the journey. So this is your last call on this podcast to join me for WET this weekend. Doors close. This is Wednesday. I'm recording this. Doors close Thursday night at midnight. We begin on Friday. It's $44. It's a weekend of just absolute shenanigans. I will be teaching 3 separate workshops over the course of 3 days. Join for whatever you want. Everything is recorded. We will be pulling out our Oracle decks and our tarot cards. We're going to be working with our burnout, creating bespoke care plan. We're going to be celebrating ourselves. There will be truth or dare for the weekend. There will be bedtime stories. It's going to be fun. And it's also going to be deeply supportive for you. So if 51% of you is a yes for that, I hope to see you there. And if I don't see you there, I hope what you take away from this podcast is, what am I ready, able, and willing to do to get my needs met, to feel well tended to feel well nourished and well supported? What am I able to commit to? Let it be small. Let it be doable. Look, I love an unsustainable 37-point plan that is absolutely perfect on paper, just like the next girl. And those plans always just overwhelmed me to a place of inaction. I got caught in the loop of perfecting the plan over and over again and never actually doing anything. It felt like creating the plan was doing something, but it wasn't really. And the reason that it wasn't doing anything for me or for my needs is because it was way too much. So everything in my work, everything that I endeavor to offer you is as doable as possible. And the only request is that you show up for what's doable for you. Each and every one of us has a different capacity, especially in the space of burnout. And you can heal yourself by doing what is doable for you. Tiny things, doing less and more often, trying, aiming for consistency, being kind to yourself in the process, and being willing to partner with yourself with the end game of developing a life that is as well nourished, as sustainable, and as alive as possible, where you matter, where your needs matter, because they do deeply. And this is your life. I hope you're living it for yourself to every extent that's possible. All right, see you next week. Thanks for listening to Even Here, Even Now with Mara Glatzel. If you want my support in learning to stay by your own side and nourish your needs, dance on over to maraglatzel.com/quiz to take my quiz to figure out what you need right now and receive my best tools for how to meet those needs with a greater sense of ease and confidence. If you love today's show, please leave us a rating or review wherever you subscribe to this podcast. It helps more than you know. And as always, permission loves company. If there's a human in your life that you think can benefit from this conversation, I would be so grateful if you shared it with them. Thank you. See you next time.